Hey everyone, today it's me, Frankenstein, talking about another one of my favorite hobbies, media. Well, I want to do a sort of retrospective or a review, sort of just my thoughts on Fooly Cooley. um, Fooly Cooley is one of those shows where it's almost enigmatic the way that it's shown to the world. I mean, its whole aesthetic, from the very moment it aired on Adult Swim, caught the attention of children everywhere, caught the attention of me, to say the least. And upon my rewatch, I realized the show is so seriously deep. For a lack of better words, it's so seriously deep. And as a kid, when I watched it, I just really liked the animation. I thought I'd never seen something like this before, but really, Fooly Cooley is, well, to say the least, it was a revolutionary artwork. Fooly Cooley was more than simply an anime OVA. It was a show that portrayed an emotion that not a lot of shows can. An emotion that I like to describe as reality setting in. Reason for it becoming a cult classic, it makes sense why it did. Because the message in the show being that time in a child's life before they start coming of age, a time where they finally realize how big the world is and how all their problems incomparably grow pale to the world's issues and the gripping weight of responsibility that falls on their shoulders. That time where you finally realize how big the world is and how difficult it is to truly change it, to make it habitable in a way for you. And although, as sad as that may sound, I think it's probably the most intriguing part of the show. It's why I like it so much. It's a perfect portrayal of that indescribable feeling you get when you feel inspired. From a dazzling landscape or a phrase a person said, that feeling that is so strong it could bring you to tears, but yet you still have no idea what emotion it truly is, or rather, you have no idea how to describe that emotion. It is, in a sense, indescribable. Fooly Cooley portrays this feeling throughout the OVA, through its music and its wonderful visual story. By the way, I'd just like to mention that the Pillows did wonderful on the soundtrack. Um, at face value, the OVA doesn't really give you much context. It doesn't give you much to go off on, but after maybe after the second rewatch, or maybe the third rewatch, only then can you truly understand what Fooly Cooley is and how the music, the characters, and even the silly fictional ideas like medical mechanica, they all come to this string, a great string that you can follow. I mean, when I listen to the music in the OVA, which is mostly comprised of shoegaze and grunge, but while watching the series, it portrays a plethora of different emotions, different to just shoegaze's depressive, melancholic vibe and grunge's punk, post-rock aesthetic. It shows you specifically the wistful, indescribable emotion that I was referring to earlier, and it's present throughout the show. The Pillows were tasked with such a difficult job, I feel like, when it came to the soundtrack. Because how do you make sounds that sound like something no one can describe? I'm sure the author could probably describe it pretty well, but I feel like you can never truly grasp it from the perspective of the band. But yet, they did amazing work to bring us a masterpiece of an OST. which pushed the boundaries of what was cliche in anime culture. As usually it would be taboo to have songs with lyrics in a scene with dialogue, but when it comes to Fooly Cooly, it works, it clicks, and I feel like it sort of shaped who I am. I mean, I can't go a single moment in my day without some sort of music playing in the background. And I love a good beat or tune just anywhere I am. I think the music soundtrack to Fooly Cooly was fundamental to a lot of people. It caused a sort of ungraspable emotion. I mean, something that's so difficult to understand, so difficult to put your finger on, but it sort of made you feel that very same nostalgic emotion. It's almost heart-wrenching the way the music can make you feel wistful, feel good, and happy all at the same time. It's triumphant in a way. I feel as though it was meant to be like that. Noota, being only a 12-year-old child, is thrust into this grown-up world of cosmos-altering characters and events that go way deeper than what he can understand, or rather should even have to understand. Because it's present throughout the show that he really wants to be grown. He wants to be grown so bad. I'm sorry, but that's not the point of the show. The point of the show was meant to leave you longing for more, but in a way that you are willing to accept, since it's not that serious of a show to begin with. But that longing you're left with, you're supposed to be left with it, because life is all about longing. Longing for your next purchase, longing for your next idea, longing for your next distraction. Life is about longing, and I feel as though Naota in this show is truly just longing for that connection. That connection that will prove to him, in his brain, that he's not a kid anymore. He's not that same 12-year-old kid hanging out with Haruka, or Haruta, I forget her name, but the girl at the bridge. And it's almost hard not to relate to him, in a way. I mean, sure, there's a lot of tear-jerking moments in the show, a lot of angst, even some lighthearted comedy. But this constant pull and push of your heartstrings is how the music can carry forth this indescribable emotion. And for many, this was the first time that music was able to gain this deep emotion out of them. An emotion so ingrained into the hippocampus of their brain, they can't even attune words to it. Now, I don't mean to say that the music is the only thing good about the show, although it's a very big part of the show that's really good, and everyone should listen to the soundtrack right now. Characters. Now, even though every character has their own compelling story and intricate pathways on how they are the way they are, I feel like talking about one character who I feel like was one of the more fascinating ones. An integral part to Naoto's character, Mamimi Samejima. The only reason I hate saying she's one of the most compelling characters to me is because people love to say sad girl tendencies and the pixie manic dream girlfriend or something. That's what most are going after, but I don't think her character was that one-sided. I don't think it was meant to come off that one-sided. I mean, okay, so to begin with, Mamimi is completely opposite to our young protagonist. She's much older with more enigmatic problems than Naota, who is constantly trying to understand these problems. Simply can't grasp. I mean, he can't understand the emotions and the feelings of betrayal that Mimi was going through and how she was dealing with that. And at the end of the day, Naota was just a kid. Just a kid hanging out with his friend. or his girlfriend, as the other kids in the show like to call it. Mamimi's background is portrayed in a very abstract way. She has a propensity to holding and caressing Naruto in a way that it's not for his sake, but for her own. She does this as to feel something, anything different from her monotonous life. Hence why she was dating Naruto's big brother. It was a way to escape this boring country life. She wanted to be a photographer. She wanted to do things, go big. But here she is, stuck in the countryside of Japan with her ex's little brother. It's tragic, but I feel as though this is the OVA's way of showing that Mamimi uses Takun, as she likes to refer to him, as an object or something that she takes a liking to. She does this as not to get emotionally attached to things in her life. As soon as these things gain any form of independence, she distances herself from them so as to protect herself. She distances herself from Takun. Once Takun realizes that he needs to do more than just sit there and listen, or even sit there and let Mamimi caress him, I'm sorry. Fuck it, who cares about pronouns? Who gives a shit? I feel as though she's distancing herself from Takun as a way to protect herself. I mean, this avoidant attachment relationship she has to things in her life come from constant betrayal in her life. His brother being one, and her habit of smoking probably stemming from, and this is not because she needs to or has a deep-rooted desire to smoke, but rather she likes fire. She has pyromaniacal tendencies. But the point of me telling you all these problems in her life isn't just to show you how deep her life goes and how sad it is and how to pull at your heartstrings. No. I want to talk about just how all of this is pushed onto Naruto at such an age that he can barely understand it. He knows something is wrong and he wants to help. He deeply desires to, but he simply can't. He doesn't know how. And characters like Mamimi bring forth that wistful emotion, that unawareness rather, of how to deal with not only his own emotions, but other characters' emotions. I feel as though it's not something that only he struggles with. Everyone at one point in their life struggled to understand someone's emotions. Maybe they didn't try hard enough and it ended sour, but maybe they did. Just maybe they didn't have to understand it and they didn't have to comprehend it, but they simply just had to accept it for what it was. Emotions. Another person's or your own. That's all they are. Emotion. Medical Mechanica. Medical Mechanica is never really expanded on much in the OVA, so I'm not going to speculate on it further than what is needed. But I think it did not need to be explained as Medical Mechanica, because Medical Mechanica was much more of a straightforward way of showing the almost world-ending problems that are being pushed onto Naruto. Problems in the real world that are too big for him to understand and too big to even put into reality. So he creates these machinations, these creatures in his head, easy ways to solve the issue. I mean, problems in the real world are never this big, but the point is that the problems you face can feel that big. They can feel world-ending. They can feel soul-crushing, especially when you aren't able to understand them. You can narrow your vision to an indistinguishable blur, but these problems, they tend to fix themselves. The problem being these huge mechanical creations that emerge out of Naoto's head and other characters in the show. But the whole point of that is to get this to the audience. The whole point of Naota creating these machinations and medical mechanica in his head is to get this idea to the audience of your issues feel impossible to tackle, and they only get bigger and bigger until you can't handle them anymore, i.e., you overflow. Mechanica seem to come from an overflow of these emotions, of emotions that are so hard to grasp that you just push them away. And if you push them away far enough, they grow just as powerful as Atomisk, who is a mysterious being of energy that is the apple of Haruko's eyes, who's another love interest of Naota. Now, at first, Atomisk is portrayed as Haruko's lover, but later we find out that Haruko simply wishes to take Atomisk's power. But from Naruto's perspective, Naruto, we're talking about Naruto Shippuden now. Fuck you, shut up! Sorry. But from Naruto's perspective, it sort of feels like some sort of unrequited love that Haruko's forcing herself into, and it never ends well for her. And so Naota, look, I'm gonna butcher the fucking pronunciation, just accept it, okay? Naota doesn't fully understand his feelings towards Haruko. He still understands that he views Atomisk as some sort of rival, this made-up love feud that he has in his head, but he still doesn't understand why he's so jealous of this made-up creature, of this medical mechanica. But, I mean, that just goes to show how complex this anime really is. I mean, to deal with a topic such as love in a way like this is so rare to see from an anime of that time. And as usual, love is such a simple idea. The whole point of love in anime before Fooly Cooly to me was just you find your love and the protagonist ends up with their love interest at the end, because of course they do. They didn't have any meaningful conversations, they barely talked, and they had a couple of lucky lecture moments, and yet they end up together at the end. That doesn't happen in Fooly Cooly. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like a breath of fresh air. Since Haruko simply sees Naruto as a tool to get to Atomisk, but Naruto is too young to see that. He's too naive to grasp it. He still feels as if he works hard enough. One day, Haruko will see him as a love interest as well. And boy, do I relate. I think this intentional bittersweet aftertaste the show leaves in viewers' minds and mouths is just another great portrayal of that indescribable feeling, that emotion, which in this case has something to do with love, that can never really be said. Naruto never brings this up to Haruko or Mamimi. He never says, hey, I have a crush on you, I love you, and I want to be with you. Because he's scared. He doesn't know what he's feeling, but he knows he wants to stick around it. He knows that he wants to be in the company of these people, and he wants to experience more of these big emotions at such a young age. These emotions in which Naruto is so close to figuring out, so close to understanding, but once again, he just can't quite reach it. And in a way, that's cathartic, because he didn't reach it. So why does the protagonist get to? And I know that sounds kind of selfish, but honestly, I love a show that's relatable. So, I mean, love being thrown about as if it holds no weight. Well, in conclusion, I want to end off with the track, my favorite track from the OST of Fooly Cooly. Thank You, My Twilight by the Pillows. But I'm not quite done talking about the OVA, to be specific, because I think there's a lesson behind this entire show. This constant wanderlust that Naoto feels throughout the OVA can only be seen as a deep longing for everything he can't understand. I think the whole point of Fooly Cooly was not to show you what the work of free-thinking and talented group of animators can do, but rather to teach young people to not take on problems in such a serious way. Not to take life so seriously. I mean, in the words of the creator, you should live life in the now and not think about it too much, because sometimes you aren't meant to understand things. Sometimes you just gotta feel it.